Welcome to my channel. Today, I am going to tell you an excellent emotional story.
The weight of a single heartbeat, the first language I learned was vibration. Before words, before names, there was the deep metallic hum singing through the iron rails, a constant tremor that passed through the rough wool of my blanket and into the marrow of my bones. It was the sound of the world, immense and distant, and it was the sound of my crib. My world was small. It was the warm, soft cloud of her scent, of jasmine and milk and something uniquely her. It was the safe, solid mountain of him, the rumble of his laughter that I felt before I heard. They were the two pillars of my universe. And then one day the mountain crumbled. The laughter stopped. The world became a quieter, colder place, filled only with her scent, which had now changed. The jasmine was buried under something sharp and acrid, a smell I would later learn to name: fear. The day the world ended began with silence. A different silence. The usual rustling, the soft sighs, the murmured words were gone. There was only the sharp, cold air and the distant, lonely cry of a train whistle. I was wrapped tightly, too tightly, and then I was moving. The familiar warmth of her arms was replaced by a biting cold that seeped through the blanket. The softness of her shoulder was exchanged for something hard, unyielding, and cold. Gravel pressed into my back. I looked up and saw a vast expanse of purple and indigo, a ceiling so high it made my tiny stomach lurch. The smell of jasmine was gone, utterly obliterated by the overwhelming tarry scent of creosote from the railway sleepers. It was a bitter medicine smell that coated my tongue. Then the sound began. Not the familiar hum, but a deep, growing roar. The steel beneath me began to shudder. Not a song anymore, but a scream. A light, fierce and blinding, erupted in the distance, growing, swallowing the twilight. It was coming for me. The noise was a physical force pressing down on me. I didn't cry. I was too small, too full of a terror that had no voice. Instead of the crushing end, there was a violent gust of wind, a shout ripped from a throat raw with panic, and I was airborne for a terrifying second before being crushed against a thin, heaving chest. The breath whooshed out of me. The train thundered past, a hurricane of noise and wind that tore at us. And then, in the sudden deafening quiet, I found my voice. I wailed. I wailed for the lost warmth, for the terrifying noise, for the shock of the cold. The man holding me was shaking. I could feel his heart hammering against my side, a wild, frantic drumbeat against my own. He smelled of old wool, wood smoke, and sweat. He looked down at me, his face a landscape of wrinkles and shock, streaked with tears that cut through the grime on his cheeks. He held me like I was made of glass, and he whispered a name into the space between us. Anya, he breathed as if testing a prayer. Little Anya. Found, not lost. His name was Elias. He was my world now. My kingdom was a rusted signal box he called the castle. It was our sanctuary, smelling of damp wood, rust, and the eternal scent of the railway. Elias was a magician. He transformed a discarded drawer into a bed, lining it with stolen hay and a rag he washed over and over in icy water until it was soft. He was a scavenger king, knowing the rhythms of the city's discard. The best bread appeared just after dawn behind the bakery. The kind woman at the fruit stall would sometimes drop an apple near his waiting hand. The hardest magic was milk. This ritual defined my early years. He would bundle me inside his enormous frayed coat, a hidden, precious secret against his chest. We would go to the park at first light, and he would approach the young mothers with their pristine strollers. His voice would drop, become gentle and broken. Please, ma'am, my daughter. She's poorly. Her mother, gone. Just a drop for the baby. His eyes full of a sorrow that was never faked, and my small, curious face peeking out always worked. He collected kindness in small, vital measures, and it was enough. It was love. He was my teacher. He showed me how the world worked, the language of birds, the secret meanings of cloud shapes, the art of being invisible. He couldn't give me toys, so he gave me stories. Our castle was a spaceship. The trains were great iron dragons, and we were its guardians. At night, he'd point a grimy finger at the brightest star. "That's your North Star, my little Anya," he'd whisper, his voice rough but soft. "No matter how lost you feel, you look for that one. It will always lead you home, and home is right here." His finger would tap gently, firmly on my chest, over my heart. I believed him completely. But the outside world had a way of crashing in. When I was 7, boys found our castle. Their voices were loud and cruel, calling Elias a dirty tramp and me a track rat. A stone flew through our window, and another hit Elias on the temple. A thin line of blood welled up and traced a path down his cheek. He didn't yell. He just stood in front of me, his body a frail wall between me and the cruelty, until they lost interest and left. That night, as I tried to clean the cut with a damp cloth, his hands were shaking. I saw a new emotion in his eyes. Fear. Not for himself, but for me. I was getting too big, too noticeable. Our hidden world was shrinking. The woman came the next day. She didn't have police with her. She just stood at the bottom of our steps, her clothes clean, her face kind but serious. "Hello," she said. "My name is Sarah. I'd like to talk to you about Anya." I clutched Elias's leg, burying my face in his worn trousers. I felt his body go very still. He told her everything. The sound of the train, the bundled shape on the tracks, the years of love. He didn't fight. When he finished, he looked at her, tears streaming freely down his face, and said the words that would break my heart. "She's a good girl. The best. She deserves more than this. She deserves a real bed. She deserves to go to school." I didn't understand. Why was he saying this? Didn't he want me anymore? When Sarah pried me from his arms, I screamed. I screamed for my Papa Eli, for my castle, for my world. He just stood there, a solitary, crumbling statue, one hand pressed over his heart as the car drove me away. The betrayal was a physical pain. He had let them take me. The new world was made of quiet surfaces and soft colors. Brenda and Mark were kind. They gave me a room with a real bed, new clothes that didn't smell of smoke, and hot meals at a table. But it was a silent, suffocating world. The walls felt like they were pressing in on me. The night was an eerie void, without the familiar, comforting shudder of the trains. I was a ghost. At school, the other children's lives seemed like a play I was watching from a great distance. They worried about games and cartoons. I lay awake at night, my stomach clenched with a fear I couldn't name. Was Elias cold? Was he hungry? Was he lonely without me? The guilt was a constant, aching companion. I had a warm bed while he was alone in the rusting castle. Brenda tried. She would read to me at bedtime. One night, she chose The Railway Children. I listened, frozen, as she read about children who had adventures by the railway, who waved at friendly trains. It was a fairy tale version of my life, clean and safe. When she closed the book, she looked at me with gentle eyes. "Anya," she said softly, "you can talk about him. You can talk about Elias. It's okay to miss him." It was the permission I didn't know I needed. The story tumbled out of me in a chaotic, tear-soaked river. The scavenged food, the stories of stars, the rusty kingdom, the immense, terrifying love. She listened, and I saw not pity in her eyes, but wonder. She became my bridge. She helped me write letters to Elias, sending them to the post office general delivery. We never got a reply, but the act of writing, of telling him about my new world, made the ache lessen just a little. Years softened the sharp edges of my grief. Brenda and Mark adopted me. Their love was steady and patient, a different kind of love from Elias's wild, desperate devotion, but it was real. I learned to accept it. I did well in school, finding a voice through writing. I filled notebooks with stories of a brave old king and his princess in a rusty castle, but a part of my heart never left those railway tracks. When I was 16, a letter came. It was from Sarah, the social worker. My hands trembled as I opened it. She wanted to meet. We sat in a quiet cafe. Her face was older, kinder. "Anya," she began, and her tone made my blood run cold. "I found Elias. Or rather, I checked on him. Is he okay?" The words were a whisper. She placed her hand over mine. "He passed away last winter, in a shelter. It was pneumonia. They said it was peaceful. The world dissolved into a blur of hot tears. My anchor was gone. My Papa Eli was gone." But Sarah held my hand tighter. "The shelter manager said he talked about you all the time. He was so proud of you. He kept a box." She pushed a small, dented metal tin across the table. Inside was my life. Every drawing I'd ever sent, softened at the edges from being handled. A lock of my baby hair, a photo from my first day of middle school, and at the bottom a folded piece of paper. The writing was shaky, the letters painfully formed. "My dearest Anya, my little star, if you are reading this, I am gone to look after the tracks in the sky. Do not be sad for me. My life was worth living because I found you. You were not abandoned. You were found. By me. You were loved. By me. I have one regret. I never told you the whole truth. Your first mother, her name was Layla. Your father, his name was Arjun. They loved each other very much. Sometimes, love is not enough to fight the terrible storms inside a person. You have a family who loves you. Be happy. But if your heart ever needs to know, you can look. Follow your North Star, my Anya. It will guide you. All my love, forever and always, your Papa Eli. I cried for the man who had loved me enough to let me go. I cried for his lonely death. But amidst the grief, a new feeling sparked, a fragile, terrifying sense of purpose. He had given me a final gift, not just absolution, but a name. Layla, Arjun. They were real people. The seed was planted. It took years to grow. I became a journalist, driven by a need to find truths, to tell stories. I loved Brenda and Mark deeply, but the quiet need to understand my beginning became a quiet hum, a constant vibration in my life, just like the rails of my infancy. At 25, I began the search. A name and an approximate date were like searching for a specific drop in the ocean. Days spent in the library's microfiche room yielded nothing but eye strain. Hope was fading when I saw it. A tiny, 3-line obituary. Arjun Mehta, beloved son, taken too soon in a tragic accident. It was a thread. I hired a private investigator. He found the report, a hit and run, a life erased in a moment. He found Arjun's parents. His father was gone. His mother, Shobha, was in a nursing home, her mind lost to dementia. Visiting her was a profound sadness. She was a hollow shell, staring at a wall. This was a dead end. But a nurse, seeing my despair, mentioned a box of old things. In it, nestled under old papers, was a wedding album. And I saw them. Arjun was handsome, his smile brilliant and easy, his eyes kind. He looked at the camera with a joy that was almost tangible. And beside him, holding his arm, was a young woman. Layla. She was beautiful, with large, dark eyes and a smile that was both joyful and shy. This was not a monster. This was a girl in love. One photo shattered me. He was dipping her back in a laughing kiss, and she was clinging to him, her face radiant with pure, absolute love. This was not a story of cold abandonment. The story was wrong. Tucked in the album was a letter, the writing elegant but frantic, stained with tears. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mehta, I know you blame me. I blame myself. Arjun was my son, and now my world is dark. I have nothing. The baby, she has his eyes. I look at her and I see him, and the pain is a physical thing, a knife in my chest every time. I can't breathe. I'm so ashamed. My family has disowned me. I have no money, no home. I'm a burden to her. She deserves a life, a real life, not a mother who is a ghost. I am leaving her where someone good will find her. It is the only good thing I can do. It is the hardest thing I will ever do. Forgive me. I loved your son more than life itself. Layla. I sat on the cold storage room floor, the paper trembling in my hands. The truth washed over me, not as a shock, but as a profound, heartbreaking understanding. She didn't leave me out of cruelty. She was shattered. Grief had convinced her that her very presence was a poison to me. Her act, which had always felt like the ultimate rejection, was, in her broken mind, the ultimate sacrifice. She hadn't run away with a lover. She had run away from a pain so vast it consumed her. The investigator found her trail. Adrift from city to city, a life of solitude and poverty. And then it went cold. She had vanished. It took 2 more years. She had changed her name, moved to a remote coastal town, and become a recluse, a ghost. I stood outside her small, weathered cottage, the salt wind a familiar feeling, like the wind from the passing trains. My heart was a frantic drum. 30 minutes I stood there, paralyzed. I couldn't do it. I turned and walked away. I spent a week in the town watching her. I saw a small, hunched figure with gray-streaked hair, moving through life with a quiet, mechanical emptiness. She bought a single loaf of bread. She disappeared behind her door. Her life was a monument to silence. On the 8th day, I saw her trip on a cobblestone and fall. Her groceries scattered. Without thought, I ran. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice shaking as I helped her up. She winced, clutching her wrist. "I'm fine, thank you," she murmured, not looking at me. I gathered her apples and her bread. As I handed them to her, our hands brushed and our eyes met. Time stopped. I was looking into my own eyes. They were older, etched with pain, but they were mine. Her breath caught in her throat. Her face, a mask of quiet endurance, collapsed. Shock, fear, and a dawning impossible hope warred in her expression. She knew. She didn't know my name, but she knew who I was. I was her ghost. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. "No." It was a whisper, a plea. "It can't be." "My name is Anya," I said, tears finally spilling over. "I was found on the railway tracks by a man named Elias." I mentioned his name like a shield, a testament that I had been loved. He gave me a letter. It told me your name was Layla. A sound escaped her, a raw, wounded thing. She collapsed onto a low wall, her body trembling, her eyes never leaving my face. I'm not here to hurt you, I said, my voice soft. Or to blame you, I needed to understand. And then she broke. Great, heaving sobs that seemed to tear her apart from the inside. I sat beside her, not touching her, just sharing the space, bearing witness to a pain 3 decades old. When she could speak, her voice was raspy with disuse and tears. I loved your father, she said, the words torn from a deep, hidden place. He was everything. When he was gone, the light went out. I was a child myself. I had no one, and you were so beautiful. You were all I had left of him. And every time I looked at you, it was like losing him all over again. The pain was physical. I couldn't breathe. She looked at me, her eyes begging for a forgiveness she never expected to receive. I thought you would be better off. I thought any life was better than a life with a mother who was a ghost. Leaving you was a terrible, horrible, mistaken act of love. I have regretted it every single second of every single day since. There has not been a moment of peace. I believed her. The weight of her regret was the most real thing I had ever felt. I had a good life, I told her, and it was the truth. I was loved. I was happy. She cried again, but this time it was with a shuddering relief. Thank you, she choked out. Thank you for telling me that. I didn't forgive her that day. Forgiveness was a vast country I hadn't yet reached. But I understood the broken girl she had been. I saw the devastating math of her grief. She believed she was subtracting her pain to add to my future. I visited her every day for a week. We talked of small, safe things. It was awkward, a bridge being built one fragile plank at a time. On my last day, as I stood to leave, she looked small and ancient in her doorway. Anya, she said, her voice barely a whisper. May I hug you? I hesitated, then nodded. She stepped forward and her arms came around me. It was not a warm, motherly embrace. It was the desperate, clinging hold of a woman who had been drowning for 30 years and had finally found something solid to hold on to. She smelled of salt and soap and old sorrow. I don't expect anything, she whispered into my hair. Just knowing you are alive and well is a gift I never deserved. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for letting me see his eyes one more time. I am 30 years old now. I am a writer. I am married to a good man. We have a daughter. She has my eyes, and I like to think, Elias's spirit. Layla and I write letters. It's easier for us than talking. She tells me about the sea outside her window. I send her pictures of my little girl. She calls her my grand star. We are building something fragile from paper and ink and shared history. On my daughter's first birthday, I took her to the railway yard. The castle is gone, replaced by sleek, modern things. But the tracks are the same. I held my daughter close and pointed to the sky. See that one, my love? I whispered, finding the brightest star. That's your North Star. However lost you get, it will always guide you home. I thought of Arjun, whose love burned too bright and too brief. I thought of Layla, whose love was so desperate it broke her. I thought of Elias, whose love was so selfless it saved me. My story was never about being left behind. It was about being found. It was built not on an absence, but on a legacy of love. A love that was passionate, a love that was broken, and a love that was steadfast. I carry the weight of that single heartbeat on the tracks not as a wound, but as my foundation. It is the heartbeat that gave me my life. And it beats on, in me and in my daughter, a story that is finally and fully understood.